The sky over the Pelennor Fields did not bleed the crimson of a setting sun, nor the bruised purple of an oncoming storm. Instead, it tore open in a jagged electric wound of cerulean energy that defied the ancient laws of Middle-earth. High above the white city of Minas Tirith, a ripple of psionic displacement cascaded downward, a thunderclap that silenced the screams of orcs and the frantic horns of Gondor alike. 3 streaks of fire descended from the rift, slamming into the earth between the charging Rohirrim and the towering Haradrim Mumakil. The impact crater was a perfect circle of vitrified soil, glowing with an otherworldly heat. From the haze of ionized ozone, Hierarch Artanis stepped forth, his golden armor scarred by the fires of the warp, his eyes burning with the cold light of the Kala. To his left, our Zeratul emerged from a shifting veil of shadow, his green warp blade humming with a frequency that made the very air of Ea shiver. Between them, with the heavy clank of hydraulic pistons and the hiss of cooling vents, Tychus Findlay rose, shifting his massive C-14 Impaler Gorse rifle. He spat a cigar butt into the scorched dirt, his visor reflecting the horrific spectacle of the Battle of the Pelennor Fields. "Hells, it's about time," Tychus growled, his voice amplified by the suit's external speakers. Though I got to say, Jimmy didn't mention anything about dragons or oversized elephants. Artanis did not answer immediately. He reached out with his mind, seeking the familiar resonance of the Kala, but found only a crushing, ancient darkness, a shadow that felt like a physical weight upon his thoughts. "This world is choked by a singular malevolent will," Artanis telepathically projected, his voice echoing in the minds of his companions. "It is not the void of Amon, but it is kin to it, a corruption of the spirit. We must find the source of this resonance if we are to survive this displacement." Zeratul's gaze was fixed on the sky, where the fell beasts of the Nazgul circled like vultures. "The shadows here have teeth, Hierarch, but look! The grip of the Master is slipping. I feel a fracture in the dark harmony." High above, the Witch King of Angmar felt the rupture. For millennia, his soul had been a puppet on a string, a mere extension of the burning eye in the east. But as the warp jump collapsed the dimensional barriers, a surge of raw, chaotic psionic energy washed over the Nine. It acted like a solvent on a rusted chain. The absolute command of Sauron, channeled through the One Ring, flickered for a fraction of a second. In that heartbeat of freedom, the Witch King remembered the taste of his own name. He remembered the weight of his own crown. And he felt a sudden, icy hunger for a throne that was not Barad-dûr. "The eye is blinded by the intruders," the Witch King hissed, his voice a rasp of dead leaves. He turned his fell beast away from the walls of the city. Behind him, the other 8 followed, their collective will coalescing into something new, something treacherous. They were no longer the shadows of Sauron. They were the shadows of the world, and they had found their own hunger. On the ground, the conflict had ground to a confused halt. An Uruk-hai captain, fueled by bloodlust, lunged toward Artanis, swinging a jagged scimitar. The Protoss moved with a speed that made the air crack. With a single fluid motion of his psi blade, Artanis decapitated the creature, the pure energy of the blade cauterizing the wound instantly. "Easy there, gold pants!" Tychus yelled, opening fire as a wave of orcs surged toward them. The Gorse rifle roared, its supersonic slugs tearing through leather, bone and iron with horrific efficiency. A phalanx of orcs vanished in a spray of black ichor and shattered shields. "Save some for the guy with the gun!" "Hold your fire, Terran!" Zeratul commanded, blinking through the shadows to decapitate a troll that had raised its club. "We are being watched, not by the eye, but by the hunters." The Witch King descended, but not to attack the strangers. He landed his beast upon a pile of corpses, and the creature's wings casting a wide shadow over the 3 warriors. The air grew cold, colder than the vacuum of space. The Nazgul stood tall, his crown shimmering with a spectral light. "Strangers from the void," the Witch King spoke, and for the first time in an age, there was no echo of Sauron in his voice. "You have broken the tether. The Eye sees you as a threat. I see you as a catalyst. Artanis stepped forward, his blades humming. We do not seek alliances with the dead. You reek of the same corruption that we have fought across the stars. Corruption? The Witch King let out a hollow laugh. We are the true masters of this realm, long denied by a master who hides in a tower of stone. He fears you. He sends his legions to drown you. But we offer you a choice. Help us extinguish the Eye, and you shall have your path back to the stars. Oppose us, and you shall join the ghosts of this world. Tychus chuckled, reloading his rifle. Look, Spooky, I've made deals with devils before. Usually ends with someone getting shot. What makes you think we'd trust a guy who looks like a laundry basket with a crown? Because, the Witch King leaned forward, the Eye has already sent the Haradrim, and he has called for the black ships. You are 3, his pawns are millions. As if on cue, the horizon darkened with a fresh wave of reinforcements. But these were not orcs. Huge, hulking shapes moved in the distance, beasts that had been twisted by Sauron's panic into something resembling the hybrids of the Zerg. The Dark Lord, sensing his control over the Nine was fraying, had begun to pour his own essence into the land itself, mutating the local fauna into mindless engine of destruction. The resonance is shifting, Artanis noted, his sensors picking up the biological anomalies. The Dark Lord is desperate. He is sacrificing the stability of this world to erase us. Then we strike, Zeratul whispered, but not at the minions. We strike at the tower. If the Nazgul seek to betray their master, let them be our vanguard. We will use the shadow to kill the darkness. The alliance was born of necessity and treachery. The Nazgul took to the skies, no longer as scouts for Sauron, but as a predatory fleet. They began to harvest the orc armies, their shrieks now tuned to a frequency that shattered the iron wills of the Uruk-hai. Below, the 3 heroes of the Koprulu Sector moved like a scalpel. Artanis activated his zealot charge, a blur of golden light that carved a path through the centre of the Haradrim line. Behind him, Tychus deployed an auto-turret, its twin barrels spitting leaden death at anything that moved. They weren't just fighting, they were clearing a path to the Black Gate. Suddenly, the earth groaned. A massive fissure opened, and from the depths of the Pelennor, a creature of shadow and flame erupted. A Balrog, but not like the one from Moria. This one was armoured in plates of obsidian, its whip crackling with psionic lightning. Sauron had reached deep into the roots of the world to pull forth a guardian. Now that's a big boy, Tychus said, his grin widening as he armed a shredder grenade. Let's see how he likes some 26th century hospitality. The Balrog roared, a sound that shook the foundations of Minas Tirith. Artanis met the beast head-on, his side blades clashing against the flame whip. The air erupted in a kaleidoscope of gold and fire. Zeratul moved in the periphery, a ghost in the machine, waiting for the moment to strike at the beast's core. But the Witch King, watching from above, had other plans. He saw the struggle and realised that if the Protoss died, his chance at seizing the ring for himself would vanish. He dived, his fell beast's claws raking across the Balrog's obsidian hide. "The ring is the key!" the Witch King screamed into Artanis' mind. "The Master has pulled it back to the mountain! We must fly to the fire!" The battle raged as the sun was completely blotted out by an artificial eclipse, a manifestation of Sauron's growing wrath. Thousands of orcs fell as the Nazgul turned their terror upon their own allies. The fields of Pelennor became a slaughterhouse of conflicting loyalties. As Artanis delivered a final, psionic-powered blow to the Balrog's skull, the beast dissipated into a cloud of ash. The hierarch looked up at the Witch King. "Lead the way, Wraith, but know this. If you betray us, there is no corner of the void where you can hide from my blades." The 9 wheeled in the air, setting a course for the black peaks of the Ephel-Duath. Behind them, the ruins of Gondor burned, and ahead, the Eye of Sauron pulsed with a rhythmic, terrified light. The rebels of the Koprulu Sector and the traitors of Angmar were coming for the throne. As they crossed the threshold of the Black Gate, the air itself became a toxic soup of ash and dark energy. Tychus's suit sensors began to wail, warning of extreme environmental hazards. "Ma, armor's taking a hit, boss. This place is worse than Char." "Focus, Findlay," Artanis commanded. "We are approaching the heart of the storm." Suddenly, the ground beneath them didn't just shake, it tilted. The very geography of Mordor was being rewritten. Sauron was no longer just a king, he was becoming the terrain. Mountains rose like jagged teeth to swallow them. The air solidified into barriers of pure hate. Zeratul stopped, his blade flickering. He knows. He knows of the betrayal. He's not just defending the tower, he's collapsing the world to ensure no one else can have it. The Witch King screeched, his fell beast struggling against the unnatural winds. He would destroy all of Middle-earth rather than lose his grip. We must reach the Sammath Naur before the fire consumes the sky. The race to Mount Doom had begun, on a desperate sprint across a landscape that was actively trying to kill them. Thousands of mutated orcs, now fused with the very stone of Mordor, clawed at their feet. Tychus let out a roar, his Gorse rifle glowing red-hot from the friction of continuous fire. "If we're going to die in a volcano, I'm taking every one of these ugly bastards with me." Tychus screamed, throwing his last belt of grenades into a cluster of stone trolls. The hierarch gathered his strength, a golden aura expanding from his body, pushing back the encroaching darkness. They were a few miles from the slopes of the volcano when the sky finally broke. A beam of pure, agonizing light shot down from the eye, striking the Witch King directly. The wraith plummeted, his fell beast incinerated in an instant. Artanis skidded to a halt near the fallen wraith. The Witch King was formless, a pile of empty robes and a shattered crown. "The Master. He has found the tether." The wraith hissed, his voice fading. "He is pulling us back." Around them, the other 8 Nazgul began to dissolve, their screams echoing as Sauron forcibly reabsorbed their essences to fuel his final transformation. The betrayal had failed, or so it seemed. "We are alone now," Zeratul said, looking at the towering inferno of Mount Doom. "The shadow has been reclaimed. Only the light remains to challenge the dark." "Then let the light burn," Artanis declared, his voice a clarion call that pierced the gloom. "Tychus, Zeratul, to the summit. We finish this." They began the final ascent, the heat melting the seals on Tychus's suit, the psychic pressure threatening to shatter the Protoss' minds. But as they reached the entrance to the cracks of doom, they found someone waiting. Not a god, not an army, but a small, shivering creature holding a golden band that pulsed with a light more ancient and terrible than any star. The ring had found its way to the end, and the war for the soul of the world was about to reach its absolute zero. The air inside the Sammath Naur was not merely hot. It was a physical weight, thick with the sulphurous breath of the world's core and the suffocating psychic pressure of the One Ring. Frodo Baggins stood upon the precipice, his small frame silhouetted against the churning magma below. But he was no longer the shire folk Artanis had glimpsed in the Kala's ripples. His eyes were wide, glazed with a terrifying golden luminescence, and the ring hung from his finger not as a burden, but as an anchor for a god. "He's compromised," Tychus spat, his armor's cooling systems screaming in a high-pitched whine as they fought the 2,000-degree ambient heat. He levelled the impaler at the hobbit, but his finger hesitated on the trigger. "Boss, tell me I don't have to scan and clear a midget. That's a new low, even for me." "Stand down. My Tychus," Artanis commanded, his golden shields crackling as they interacted with the ring's malevolent aura. He stepped forward, his heavy boots clanking on the obsidian floor. "Little one, the shadow you hold is a lie. It is a parasite that will consume your world and leave only ashes. Give it to us. We can neutralize its frequency." Frodo turned, and the voice that issued from his lips was a distorted chorus, the whisper of the ring and the roar of Sauron combined. "Neutralize? You speak of frequencies and stars while you stand in the house of the Maker. You are interlopers. The eye has seen your metal cities and your dying suns. It craves them. Suddenly, the shadows in the corners of the chamber coalesced. The Nazgul had not been destroyed, they had been refined. Sauron, sensing the intruders were at the very brink of his undoing, had poured the totality of his remaining essence into the nine. They surged from the walls, no longer wearing robes, but manifesting as ethereal warriors of jagged glass and black smoke. "The trap is sprung," Zeratul hissed, his warp blade igniting in a flash of emerald light. He disappeared in a blink, just as the Witch King's spectral mace smashed into the spot where he had stood. "Artanis, the Hobbit is the conduit. If the ring stays in his hand, Sauron will manifest through his very flesh." The chamber erupted into a chaotic symphony of science and sorcery. Tychus opened fire, the muzzle flash of his gas rifle illuminating the cavern in rhythmic strobes. The slugs passed through the spectral Nazgul, ripples appearing in their forms but doing little damage. "Bullets ain't doing squat, Zeratul. I need something with a little more kick." "Use the grenades, Terran! Disrupt their physical anchoring!" Zeratul shouted as he danced between the blades of three wraiths. His warp blade, carved from the essence of the void itself, was the only weapon truly capable of wounding the spirits. Each strike of his blade sent shivers of green fire through the Nazgul, forcing them to screech in agonizing dissonance. Artanis ignored the wraiths, his focus entirely on Frodo. He reached out with a psionic storm, but instead of a destructive blast, he created a containment field, a shimmering cage of blue energy meant to isolate the ring's signal. "Frodo, fight it! The Kala shows me your heart. It is a garden, not this wasteland." Frodo laughed, a sound like breaking glass. He raised the ring and a beam of pure, concentrated malice shot forth, shattering Artanis' containment field and slamming the Hierarch against the cavern wall. The ring was adapting. It was learning the language of psionics. "It's feeding on you, Gold Boy," Tychus yelled. He slammed a fresh canister into his suit's auxiliary port, an experimental EMP charge intended for sentry bots. "If it likes energy, let's see how it handles a blackout." Tychus lunged forward, the servos in his legs straining. He didn't fire at Frodo. He fired at the ground beneath the Hobbit's feet. The EMP detonated in a dome of white electricity. For a split second, the golden glow of the ring flickered. The psychic link between Sauron and the ring was momentarily jammed by the Terran technology. In that heartbeat of interference, the Witch King screamed, his form losing cohesion. Zeratul seized the moment. "Now! Aye, Artanis!" The Hierarch recovered, his eyes burning with a fierce, renewed light. He didn't use his blades. He channeled the collective will of the Dalam, the memory of 1,000 fallen Protoss warriors, and focused it into a single point of telekinetic force. He didn't strike Frodo. He pulled. The ring was wrenched from Frodo's finger. The Hobbit collapsed, the golden light vanishing from his eyes, replaced by a hollow, devastating grief. The ring hovered in the air, spinning violently, emitting a sound that was less of a noise and more of a mental scream. The Nazgul froze, their forms flickering like dying candles. Then, the mountains spoke. The volcano began to self-destruct. Sauron, realizing the ring was no longer in his control, initiated a final, scorched earth protocol. The floor of the Samath Naur split open, and a pillar of sentient flame, the eye itself, erupted from the abyss, reaching for the floating ring. "He's reclaiming it!" Zeratul cried, his cloak tattered. "If he touches it in this state of flux, he will ignite the atmosphere of this entire world." "Not on my watch," Tychus growled. He checked his HUD. His suit was at 15% integrity. "Artanis, if I don't make it back, tell Rayner. Tell him he's a sentimental idiot." Tychus Findlay didn't use his gun. He used his bulk. He ignited his suit's emergency thrusters, a short burst jump pack meant for low-gravity manoeuvring. he became a 3-ton projectile of steel and grit. He tackled the floating ring in mid-air, clutching it in his armoured gauntlet just as the pillar of flame closed in. The heat was instantaneous. The metal of Tychus's glove began to run like wax. The ring's corruption surged through the suit's neural link, flooding Tychus's brain with images of power, of a universe where he was the Emperor, where he never went to prison, where he was free. "Nice try, Shiny," Tychus gasped, his vision blurring with blood. "But I already got a boss, and he's way more annoying than you." Artanis saw the Terran falling toward the lava, the ring clutched in his melting fist. "Zeratul! The Void Shifter!" Zeratul understood. He threw his warp blade, not at the enemy, but into the air beneath Tychus. He then blinked, catching the blade in midair and using the momentum to kick Tychus toward the ledge. At the same time, Artanis unleashed a psionic storm of unprecedented scale, not at the Wraiths, but at the Eye of Flame itself. The collision of Protoss energy and the Dark Lord's essence created a localized singularity. The Samath Nar began to implode. "The mountain is falling!" Artanis roared. He grabbed the unconscious Frodo and the dazed Sam with one hand and caught Tychus's smoking suit with the other. "Zeratul, the extraction point!" "I cannot jump us all, Hierarch. The interference is too great." Zeratul shouted over the roar of the collapsing volcano. "Then we don't jump," Artanis said, his voice calm amidst the apocalypse. "We ascend." He tapped a sequence into his wrist gauntlet. High above the ash clouds of Mordor, the cloaked Protoss scout ship, Shield of Aiur, received the override command. A localized graviton beam pierced the smoke, locking onto the signatures of the 3 heroes. As they were pulled upward, as the mountain below them vanished in a plume of white-hot fire and purple psionic lightning. The one ring, still clutched in Tychus's ruined gauntlet, began to vibrate at a frequency that matched the Protoss beam. The interaction was catastrophic. The ring didn't just melt, it shattered into a million subatomic particles, its stored energy being funneled into the graviton beam. The shockwave leveled the Black Gate and sent a ripple through the fabric of space-time that was felt as far away as the Koprulu Sector. In the silence that followed, the clouds over Mordor did not just clear, they evaporated. The sun shone on the jagged wastes for the first time in millennia. The Nazgul were gone, their souls finally severed from the world, drifting into the cold void where neither Sauron nor the Kala could reach them. On the bridge of the Shield of Aiur, Tychus lay on the deck, his suit a blackened husk. Artanis stood over him, using his healing light to stabilize the Terran's scorched lungs. Zeratul stood at the viewport, watching as the land of Mordor began to settle into a new, quiet reality. Tychus coughed, a jagged, painful sound. He opened his scorched hand. The ring was gone, leaving only a faint, circular scar on his palm that glowed with a dim, fading amber light. "Did we win?" "The shadow is gone, Tychus Findlay," Artanis replied, his voice heavy with respect. "You held a god in your hand and chose to let go. Few in the history of the stars can claim such a feat." "Yeah, well," Tychus wheezed, a faint smirk touching his lips. "It was too small for my finger anyway." Zeratul turned from the window. "The rift is closing. While the energy released by the ring's destruction has stabilized the local space, we have enough power for one final jump, but we must choose." Artanis looked down at Middle-earth. He saw the white city, the green fields of the Shire, and the people who would now grow and thrive without the shadow of the eye. He then looked at the stars, toward the distant, war-torn reaches of Aiur, and the ongoing struggle against the hybrid. "This world is no longer ours to guard," Artanis said. "It has its own heroes." He looked at Frodo and Sam, who lay sleeping in the corner of the bridge, their faces finally at peace. With a gentle psionic nudge, he beamed them down to the slopes of the Ithilien woods, leaving them in a place of beauty and safety. "Set coordinates for the Shakarus system," Artanis commanded. "We have a war of our own to finish." The Shield of Aiur hummed, its engines glowing with a brilliant blue light. In a flash of psionic displacement, the ship vanished, leaving only a streak of starlight behind. Below, on the ground, Frodo woke up to the sound of birdsong. He looked at his hand, feeling a strange lightness he hadn't known for years. The weight was gone. The voice was silent. He looked up at the sky and saw a single bright star fading into the morning blue. He didn't know the names Artanis or Zeratul. He didn't know about Terrans or Protoss. But as he stood up, helped by a weeping, joyful Samwise, he knew that the giants from the stars had done what no king or wizard could. They had broken the chain of the world. And as the Fourth Age began, the legends would speak not just of the Fellowship, but of the three iron gods who fell from the sky, fought the fire, and returned to the stars, leaving a world that was, for the first time, truly free.